Welcome to Your 1%, the unique chat show on VOICESNVIEWS.com. Did you have a favorite teacher at school? I'm sure we all did. An ideal teacher is one who shows you the way to find happiness in expression, in creativity, and in knowledge. Let's meet Oorvazi Irani, a young, multifaceted filmmaker who is giving her 100% to teaching exciting subjects like film appreciation and acting. Welcome to our chat show, Oorvazi. So happy to have you here.
Thank you, Indu. It's lovely being here.
The name Irani brings to mind a number of top artists and their contribution to the Hindi film industry. Did your family background influence your choice of career?
Well, my surname, the Parsis and Iranis have been, I think, a big significant role that they played in the Indian film industry. But no, I'm not connected to any famous surname of the Iranis in terms of the family legacy. But I would say that my family has been or has played a very important role in, not specifically maybe my taste of films initially to start with, but very much filmmaking has been in the family. So I have been grown up in that atmosphere. But specifically my interest in cinema or in films gradually developed, I would say, and the different turns that it took or the different avenues that are explored with that. I would like to say that my family background has had a very important influence in shaping my artistic sensibilities. So right from when I was a kid, and my aunt, who was a Bharatanatyam dancer and PhD in dance, she used to conduct, in fact, a lot of dancing institutes that she had all over Bombay. So as a child, I used to tag along with her, and then I ended up doing a lot of dance ballets with her on stage, full-length ballets. So there was that element of dance that came into me without formally wanting to go out and train into that sphere. And then I had dad, who was, besides of course being a filmmaker, he was also classically trained in Indian music, in Indian classical music. So there was something that influenced me. Again, I never went out to train into Indian classical music or took any formal training. I have no clue, in fact, about the technicalities of it. Neither do I, in fact, go to a concert or in a very formal way address it. But it's somewhere, I think, part of me as an artist. I just enjoy sometimes singing an alap, or in my lonely moments, I would like to, just hum something. So in that way, I think that sensibility, I think also for an artist, that's something that's very interesting and important. With your body, with your voice, with the sensibilities of hearing. So I think in that very interesting way, I was influenced in small and big ways by my family. And of course, going very specifically into filmmaking, yes, I used to be looking at dad going for shootings, and Oorvazi Irani is my dad's name. He started his career with Chetananand, so very much Indian cinema, very much commercial Indian cinema, but Chetananand, as you know, is a great artist in his own right. And then got associated with a lot of European television and Channel 4, and we made about, for now, 3 decades, a lot of interesting films. And there's a very interesting incident where the film that they made, Last House in Bombay, which in fact got the Silver Conch in the Bombay International Film Festival in 1990. And I was, I don't exactly remember the year, but which standard I wasn't in the details of that, but I went along for the shoot one day. And I distinctly remember that Luke Jennings, who was the director of that film, was quite impressed by my small little poem that I had written, and wanted to include that in the film.
Well, what was that poem?
The poem was, I don't know what inspired me at that point in time to write, and specifically in Hindi, because I used to write as a child in Hindi, even though I did not understand the significance of every word, but I don't know, there was something that got me to write in Hindi. The words, played a very interesting wordplay that came out of me. So the poem was something like, ये जिंदगी में रहना है तो सब कुछ सहना भी है, ये जिंदगी में रहना है तो सब कुछ सहना भी है, जरा देखो जो सहते नहीं, जरा देखो जो सहते नहीं, वे बड़े मुश्किल में रहते हैं, उनके पास जीने का मकसद नहीं, वो कैसे जिए, भाई कैसे जिए. As a child, I don't know
Yeah.
from where that came, or maybe I was inspired by something, but I distinctly remember that was something that Luke Jennings, the director, liked and wanted, in fact, to end the documentary with that. Of course, it's a different story that when it was shown to Farooq Dhondi, who was the commissioning editor, felt that it did not go with the overall treatment of the film.
Because of the language?
The fly-in-the-wall documentary treatment, and he felt it was too, something else, and that's not the film that he wanted. So that's a different story. But I think it was my first experiences on the set, and feeling happy for maybe those few moments or that few days that my poem is part of a Channel 4 documentary.
So after this, did you venture into filmmaking on a more serious note?
What happened was when I was in college, that's when I was in Jai Hind, around the second year or so, I started becoming actively involved in making films. So the Ramayana journey, which was in fact a 6-part travelogue series on the exile route of Lord Ram. So we travelled from Ayodhya to Sri Lanka, and I was involved in the project with my dad because it was an SBI Impresario, that's our production company, project, right from research to direction to production. Everything was our baby. So I was right from being the spot boy to the boss. I experienced it all. That was in fact a lovely learning experience, and being with dad and the team, traveling all over India, I think it was wonderful. Also, it taught me that as a filmmaker, as a producer especially, you have to get things done, period. So that's, I think, a life lesson. It's very interesting to learn. So that experience was wonderful. But when I was on the shoot, in fact one day, since I was also taking the working stills, I was never really into photography seriously, but I was taking the working stills on that project. And one day sitting in the bus, I distinctly remember even now that I had this feeling that maybe somewhere there were moments in the shoot, even though everything is hunky-dory, and there are some moments where you feel that I want something of my own. I want to also work on something where I can develop something of my own. It's a separate identity. Not that I didn't have an identity here, but I guess it was my first project, and I was, working in this environment. And somewhere I felt this need of creating a separate, unique space, which I also developed with being part of the company. So that was something I set out doing, and in fact I got into still photography. So there was a kind of a good feedback with the working stills, and I said, why don't I take still photography and pursue it further? So initially my sister Oorvazi Irani was my muse, and I was experimenting with her, so to say. In fact, it's interesting that one day I planned to do like a proper shoot of hers. So we spent 1 hour doing the makeup, 1 hour dressing up, and all the discussions about it, and finally I was shooting. Spent another 1 hour doing the poses and doing all that kind of trying to make the shoot like a fashion shoot. Finally we realized, and this was, I would say, my first goof up as a photographer, that there was no role. So you can imagine the expression that my sister had when she realized that there was no role in the camera. So life went on. I was experimenting with photography since I thought that was one method that I could take. Again, there was a slight, I would say, lull in producing films as a company, and there were other activities that were going on. So I said, let me use this time to develop this as a career at one end, as one independent venture that I was getting into. So when I wanted to make it more professional level, after doing this shoot with my sister and experimenting with that, I went in fact one day to buy lights, professional studio lights, and that's where I met Martin Xavier, who was in fact that time freshly was the official photographer for the Miss Universe pageant. And he was very helpful, and we kind of got a rapport, and he said, why don't you come to my studio and I'll help you out, and we can discuss and I can help you out and things. So I landed up in his studio, and a long friendship developed from there, because he was very supportive and gave me literally his space to experiment, to play around, and he was always there, supportive in his own way, and his wife, Maxine Xavier again. was again very sweet and there for me.
So were you torn between the possibilities, for choice?
Yeah.
I mean, you could be a filmmaker, you could be a photographer, you could have been a dancer too.
Right.
So were you torn?
Dancing was something I never pursued actually once my aunt went away. With my aunt, my dancing possibilities went away.
Was acting ever on the horizon?
No, never. And coming back to your question in terms of, I was never torn apart because I think filmmaking was just there and I took to it. Unlike my sister who did not really actively become part of what we were doing as a company, that was kind of understood, you become part of the family business. But I was just trying to explore as an individualistic person that I am in my family. In fact, my dad has brought me up as that, trying to see what else I can do. So I was never torn apart between the two streams. So I was kind of into photography, but finally what I realized and what I came to is that when I was doing, and I got into fashion photography, I assisted Nisha Koti, and then I got into portfolios. But I felt at that point in time that I was not really making an original contribution because I felt there were so many people who were doing, in fact, many times a better job than I was doing. And there was more of fashion, and of course there can be beauty and aesthetics in that. I don't question that. But I felt somewhere this is not something that I want to do. So I want to take photography into fine arts, which I intend to do. And it has given me a visual sense, I think developed a visual sense, which is very important for a filmmaker. But today it's all boiled down to putting everything together, and then I got into education. And SBI Impresario, my banner becomes a kind of an ocean in which all this is possible. Because there's also a background to the company, and I think that's a beautiful kind of way that it works today.